So just to introduce myself, my name is Bella. A lot of people know me already. I thought I'd just let you know a little bit about me. I have been a scientist, a science writer. I've worked in biomedical ethics and public engagement. And I'm particularly proud to be here because some of you know this as well, that about 10 years ago, I set up the International Public Engagement Scheme at the Wellcome Trust. And it's just so beautiful to see everyone thriving in this community of practice. And I just wanted to say thank you and to everyone here. I've also worked in science policy, and what I'm doing now is I'm the recipient of a very generous Wellcome Trust Engagement Fellowship. And throughout my career, I've really been interested in working with people who might not see science or research as relevant to themselves and to their own lives. And I'm also very interested in how engagement can contribute to improved health outcomes, but also to social change. And what the fellowship has done for me is enabled me to pursue those real interests of mine in a very free and constructive way. Before I did my fellowship, and where I'm still based on secondment to do my fellowship, I actually work in a hospital and a university in Manchester, in the north of England. And I run a small unit that is all about public engagement with research. So we want to engage people from all walks of life with scientific research. We do this with all kinds of research. So we look at primary care research, we look at musculoskeletal research, we look at dermatology, a real range of research areas. But we were originally set up in 2003 to engage people with genetics and genomics. And so we've got quite a strong track record, I would say, in engaging people with genomics and genetics. And so I just thought it might be relevant for this conference just to say some of the things that we've done. We had a very active schools genomics program, which was funded by the Wellcome Trust, and you can find out more about it at this URL, where we produced resources for schools and for teachers. But really importantly, and this touches on some of the discussion that we just had in the schools panel now, we also set out to influence policy and to influence the curriculum, because as many people said this morning, you know, what is taught in schools is driven by the curriculum. And so one way of achieving impact through engagement is to engage with that curriculum, both from a scientific and an engagement perspective, and see if there are ways of influencing that curriculum. So again, I'm more than happy to talk about that. Because we're based in a hospital, we work a lot with patients. One of our projects was a resource by young people, for young people who have cystic fibrosis and who've lived with the promise of gene therapy all their lives, and just what that means to them and what it means, what that scientific research means to their lives and to their conditions. Some of you, well, all of you actually took part in the question of taste workshops and visualized your own DNA, and so that was another part of what we do. And we also work with adult audiences doing regular dialogue and debate sessions, either during science festivals, literature festivals, other festivals. Really importantly, we like to close the loop. So not only are we engaging audiences with the work, the scientific work that goes on in our hospitals and our universities, but we also aim to give those communities a voice in the scientific research process, so that we're closing the loop back to influence science and to influence research. And one of the ways that we do this through our genetic medicine departments at the hospital is through a patient advisory group. And these are usually people who have been engaged in some way, either through their condition or through a public engagement activity, and then feel that they have a voice and something to say about research. And so we include them in the mechanisms the governance and the kind of design and delivery mechanisms of research within the hospital. So just the pictures here, this was a graphic novel as well, and it was great to see another comic book earlier on in the conference. And this is just a graphic novel from a young artist with achondroplasia, a genetic condition. And through this medium, we engaged lots of school children and other patients with the genetics of achondroplasia. So throughout this conference, we've been talking about, how do you engage people around genomics and genetics? And we're all acknowledging the fact that it's complicated. So I will mainly speak about the UK. And this slide just summarizes what the situation is in the UK in terms of public understanding of genomics. So generally, public attitudes to genomics are quite positive. And people are interested because they see it as being about them. So it might be positive, but people generally have relatively poor knowledge about genomics and what it is. And quite predictably, their attitudes are formed from their cultural, social, and religious beliefs. Patient attitudes also vary quite widely. So some are very positive about genomic science, others perhaps less so. And this can depend on a number of factors, including, for example, whether there is a treatment available for the genomic or genetic condition, or whether there is none, and experiences of family history, et cetera, et cetera. And so the Wellcome Trust Monitor is a survey that's run every year and has investigated in a bit more detail what people think and know about genetics and genomics. And in 2012, people were asked to self-classify as to whether they thought they had a good understanding of genomics and genetics. And adults said, about 12% of adults said they did, and young people less. And generally, people didn't feel confident about what a genome was. And you'll see at the bottom here, say that some people say, oh, isn't it something that you put in your garden? And they're referring to a gnome, right? So very, very UK specific, but here we go. So one way of thinking about how to explain complexity is through the use of metaphor. And metaphors being anything really, they're not prescribed. They're images, comparisons, word pictures, but importantly, they bridge the known and the unknown, the familiar and the unfamiliar, and the unimaginable and the imaginable. And there's a nice quote here about, you don't see something until you have the right metaphor to let you perceive it. And it's not just, metaphor isn't just important for public audiences,